Hi guys, my name is Arshan, and today I'm going to be summarizing the plot called There Is No Game, The Wrong Dimension. Now, this game was made in 2020 and is based on a Flash game sharing its name. Without further ado, let's get started. There Is No Game starts off with Chapter 1, Mise en Abyme, where Game, an AI computer program, discourages us from playing the actual video game, but he never says why, though the user, us, is very intuitive, very picky, and also very stubborn, as we've foraged through the puzzles and barriers he has set us up for, such as you turning a sign into a brick breaker game and using the T letter as a screwdriver. But as we're about to access the game button, Game throws us into this fake operating system, Flying Squirrel OS. And due to his idiocy, he tells us not to access the prohibited folder. But as us idiotic users, we access it anyway and are immediately drawn to multiple versions of There Is No Game, where we accidentally awaken a bug called Mr. Glitch, whom is later revealed to be born of the same source code as our fellow Game here. After crashing through multiple dimensions, oops, sorry, there's an ad right here, but after crashing through multiple dimensions, we end up to Chapter 2, Behind the Scenes, where we start off with a static television, and the game we're trying to forage through multiple puzzles, such as breaking this glass, is based on Sherlock Holmes and John Watson. But unfortunately, Mr. Glitch is with us too, and after using a bunch of icons, we end up to their nearby room. And while doing so, we end up accessing a pen that we use as a screwdriver, and notice how three-dimensional this game is, how we can notice it from different angles and interact with it along the way. Once Sherlock and John get into the room, we have an unpleasant surprise. Mr. Glitch has amalgamated himself into the neighbor, Mr. Wilhelm. Unfortunately, Mr. Wilhelm does not survive the next encounter, but we'll get to that shortly. After using what they call a teletrophone, which is actually just their version of a telephone, we access someone called Miss Voodoo, a poltergeist. But a thing we have to mention is that these two characters never knew they were in a game until now. Awkward. So once we get into this teletrophone, we end up calling the number after a few struggles. And unfortunately, Mr. John Watson is probably the smartest guy among us. And here's what we need. A full moon, cover the victim with snow, and a large cherry on top. Which is very random, I know, but we'll get to that, and it'll make sense. So, as we can see, we can use this coin as a screwdriver to unscrew multiple icons. A fist, which we actually use a glass to cut out, a mouth and an eyeball. The eyeball we use for the cherry, the mouth we use as a paintbrush to make a full moon. But the snow is where we access what the game calls the dictionary, an underground attic with a space-like dimension where the developers store all the game's objects and interfaces. Once we lick the ice cream from a random cone, we use the TV static to create TV snow, which, by the way, is one of the hardest puzzles in the entire game, in my opinion. After we complete the ritual, Mr. Wilhelm literally explodes, sending Mr. Glitch on a rampage once again. And here's a funny part. We always hear Mr. Glitch explain his evil plan, but we never completely hear it due to obstacles such as this copyright protection system, or ads, or simply a character screaming in the background. Oops. Eventually, we almost kill the characters, but we save them at the last minutes because they leaped into the bathtub on the other side of this pothole. Random words, I know, but that's what's good about this game. They introduce so many random fun mechanics into such a readable story. And next reference is a Legend of Zelda-based game. The Good, the Bad, and the Princess is Chapter 3. And unfortunately, this guy over here is not exactly the brightest crayon in the box, because we kind of have to guide him through pretty much everything to be a hero. But he eventually gets there. Believe it or not, he accidentally breaks the sword, but we get another sword, and we end up beating the Dark Lord. But one of the biggest puzzles is a switch puzzle, as shown here. So as we defeat the Dark Lord through an intense boss fight, the hero and princess kiss, and we figure out the backstory of Game. See, he used to be with his counterpart, female counterpart, Global Gameplay, or Gigi for short. They were so happy together, like a couple. But unfortunately, the creator, the programmer, didn't have enough money to continue developing them. So they had to split the two apart, causing Game and Gigi to go to eternal depression pretty much, especially Game. And Hero, while trying to help, accidentally releases Mr. Glitch. Thanks a lot, buddy. And after seemingly killing them, Mr. Glitch reinvents Legend of the Secret into a free-to-play, with a bunch of scams, a bunch of knockoffs, and a bunch of, well, weird stuff. After paying for copious amounts of tools and kind of going through the same plot we've been through in the last chapter, we eventually come back to this point, where we barely escape due to a very intuitive puzzle that makes the map shaped like a key. Once we go into Chapter 5, Loss of Control, we end up experiencing and interacting with a fake credit sequence, where multiple names have multiple themes and can be inserted in multiple slots to create multiple interfaces. And after a long battle, in exchange for Mr. Glitch letting us go and freeing us, leading us home, he says, of course not. I mean, what do you expect? He's a villain. But after freeing Game from a musical mind-controlling episode, we end up meeting Gigi herself, as shown by the pink text box. So, after freeing Gigi from the musical curse, we try to go through the portal to go home and defeat Mr. Glitch. But unfortunately, Game gets very upset because only he gets home, and us, the user. And he gets very upset, as shown by the binary raining. But us, as the user, are not ready to get up on Game just yet. And despite Game pretending to erase our game save file, which I don't know how they do that, props to the programmers, we end up going to the wrong dimension. Again, but here's the catch. This dimension is the garage, the home of the game and Gigi's creator, who is voiced by a guy called Pascal. Unfortunately, we do end up accidentally shocking him, but not killing him. But this is where we learn the backstory of Mr. Glitch and Gigi. Technically, Mr. Glitch, Game, and Gigi. That's the three characters we learn the backstory of. Technically, we learned it a bit earlier, but here's what's going on. Ever since Gigi and Game got split apart, Mr. Glitch was born, and he's been causing havoc and sounds really similar to the creator and Game due to them being from the same code. So therefore, they're doing both of their voices. After a copious and uneasy alliance with the creator, we end up banishing Mr. Glitch, fusing Game and Gigi together, and going back to our home after probably the most simple fight, but very difficult fight. And after all this time, we finally play their game. But we have a choice. There are two buttons, either to play and accidentally release Mr. Glitch, or you see, we release Mr. Glitch over here. Or there's another ending where we decide not to play the game, and Game tricks us, well, kind of almost tricks us, into leaving him and Gigi alone, and then he curses at the last second. Well, that's the summary of There Is No Game, The Wrong Dimension. If you haven't played it, I don't even mind you spoiling it for anyone, because that's how good of a game this is. Okay, that was a weird thing to say. More like, if you haven't played the game, I would recommend playing it, or at least trying to learn about the plot and the storyline and how fun it is, because even though the puzzles are copious and agonizingly difficult, it's all worth it in the end. Okay guys, have a good day, and I'll see you next time.